So, Bob, I have a long email that goes into intimate partner violence and also what it's like to be a victim and what it's like to cheat on your abuser and what it's like to be coerced into a relationship by a pastor and what it's like to recover from all this and stay in the relationship with the abuser and navigating all of that. It's a long email. Normally I would summarize it so we could quickly answer it, move on to other emails, but I wanted to dedicate this whole episode just to this email. So let's get into it. What do you say?
I say yes.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Bob?
I am Bob. I'm your friend from graduate school from 30 years ago and a therapist here in practice in Seattle.
Yeah, exactly 30. In fact, this day maybe even
could be
the exact day that we met 30 years ago.
I think it was a Wednesday.
But was it? Okay.
I don't remember.
We could look it up.
Yeah, we could look it up. Yeah, it's somewhere.
Yeah, it'd be
my God.
Be maybe the first Wednesday of October or something.
Last weekend, I thought Flora was walking down my street.
Our teacher from our first class.
Very first class, yeah. And it looks so much like her. I mean, I haven't seen her in years, but it looks so much like her. I approached her. I'm like, "Are you Flora?" And the lady's like, "No, my name's Pam."
Well, I've seen Flora occasionally.
Yeah.
And she's a very intense person, even when she's not your professor. And she's very purposeful, and you could tell that she's a really great therapist.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
And she was a very good professor. Anyway, so let's get into the email. What do you say?
Yep.
So this email is from YouTube member and middle tier patron Nicole from Canada. She says, "Hi, Dr. Kirk and the podcast family, including you, Bob.
Thank you.
I've been an avid listener for a couple years now, and I've been a patron since February. Your podcast has helped me through some of the hardest years of my life and basically has been my only form of entertainment, too."
Whoa.
Well, Cole, I hope you find other ways to entertain yourself, because I can't imagine that this could be all that entertaining. Anyway, going on. I've finally worked up the courage to share my very personal story and would be so grateful to hear your thoughts, especially on the subject of infidelity within the context of abuse. I have been in a painful marriage for 17 years, and a few years ago, I had an affair with a pastor. So just chiming in here, I always ask on the form on the website how they want to be referred to.
Right.
And Nicole said she wanted to be referred to by her name.
Yep.
But I'm guessing there's a lot of Nicoles in Canada. And I also will commend people for saying, look, I don't have anything to be ashamed of.
Right.
So, this is a story. Now, if someone wants to be anonymous, that's fine.
Yeah,
but
nothing
anyway,
wrong with that.
Going on. I married young and have been in a relationship and a marriage for over 17 years. We met in high school, fell quickly in love, and I felt like I had known him forever. Just 3 months in, though, he began getting very angry, mostly around jealousy. I thought it was justified, so I tried harder and harder to please him. The control and verbal aggression only worsened. All right, so just chiming in. High school sweetheart, 17 years, jealous, rage. She's trying to please him. I often thought I was too sensitive, as he said, and tried to be tougher while he called me names and he would berate me. In some ways, it felt very familiar. I grew up in a chaotic home with loving but volatile parents. My father could be playful one moment and enraged the next. My mother was fun and expressive, but could also be bullying and reactive. These patterns carried into adulthood. With my husband, I developed anxiety and a sense of worthlessness. I detached from friends and family and gave him my whole self. So just chiming in, sounds like a pretty classic, tragic, abusive life.
Yep.
Abusive parents, abusive partner.
Right.
We moved in together after high school and had children at 19 and 20, less than a year apart. I poured myself into being a peaceful, loving mother and homemaker, but my husband continued tearing me down every few days. When he was kind, it was wonderful, but it always felt like I'd climb a hill, catch my breath, then be thrown back down again. He drank heavily. He provided well financially, but controlled the money. I became so anxious about his anger that even grocery shopping filled me with fear about what mistake I might take. Moving to the country made the isolation worse. All right, just chiming in. So yeah, this is a pretty classic. There are many different profiles, but this is a pretty common profile.
It has these elements that are pretty common, yeah.
So in all likelihood, he went through trauma himself, had certain things modeled to him. He has tremendous attachment anxiety. He deals with it in an abusive way. He doesn't know how to be vulnerable or how to build trust, and so he, quote unquote, builds an illusion of trust through control.
Right.
Because it's sort of like, we would love if we could fully trust our partners, but if that's not possible given our traumas, then some people will take the ability to control them from the outside, to impose fear or rules or control aspects. And so it's like, well, they would rather just be able to trust and not do that, but they don't think that's possible, so they resort to that thing. It doesn't justify it at all. Obviously,
No,
it's
right.
horrible. It's immoral on a level that is beyond a lot of things, because you're just like repeatedly harming someone that you're living with. He provided well financially, but controlled the money. Pretty common.
Yeah.
And a very interesting detail that really illuminates. And then if you know, because you know that this is something that you felt, maybe not specifically this, but versions of this. I became so anxious about his anger that even grocery shopping filled me with fear about what mistake I might make. So, that's a sign that if you feel afraid to do simple things, like chores or parenting or grocery shopping or sex or how you talk or how you walk or how you breathe or how you dress, or, if you're starting to become afraid of your partner doing so. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that your partner is abusive, but it's a red flag. Mm-hmm. At the very least, no one should be afraid to do something reasonable and occasionally make mistakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we make mistakes.
Yeah. And what's a mistake while grocery shopping exactly look like?
Oh, but
right?
You know what it is. It's Adam's peanut butter.
Oh.
Always buy the stir kind, not the non-stir kind. But occasionally the labels are confusing and you get the wrong kind. And is that a reason to be afraid? Fuck no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meaning you don't like the one where the oil drifts to the top?
No, that's the good one.
Oh, you want the good one?
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass to stir, but try taste test the stir versus.
Oh
the
no,
stir.
So I grew up with the non-stir because that was the only one you could get.
Yep, right.
You basically had Jiffy and you had Adams.
Skippy,
Skippy or Jiffy or whatever. One of it, Jif. Skippy. Anyway.
Yeah.
And we always got the Adams one because that was the healthy one, right? Because it doesn't have added sugar or anything.
Right.
And the stirring was a big part of the thing, right? But there was always the last little bit of peanut butter at the bottom, that you could never really fully reconstitute because it would just be neglected for so long, But I will say that eventually I made the switch to no stir.
Oh man,
peanut butter.
Traitor.
But I feel like they started to figure out a way to make non-stir peanut butter that didn't have all the added bullshit and still tasted good.
No.
It's just so much more convenient.
I get that. We have a jar of each at home right now, and I made the mistake last night of pulling the stir kind, the no stir kind out. And I'm like, yeah, it's good. And then I realized it was the wrong one. I'm like, oh yeah, right. This is better.
It spreads. The no stir one also spreads a lot easier.
It does. The texture is more amenable to making a sandwich. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And by the way, none of this is meant to trivialize what Nicole's going through. If I was at the grocery store and I was scared I was going to get the wrong jar, I mean that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yes. Going on. I was so confused because he could love me beautifully, then quickly turn cruel, sometimes toward the kids too. I forgave him over and over, tried to be the perfect wife, and gave in sexually to avoid his rage at rejection. I lost autonomy over my own body. The cycle left me emotionally exhausted and anxious as I worked hard to be a stable, attuned, peaceful parent. About 4 years ago, things escalated. He drank vodka nightly and lashed out often. Screaming at me, shaking me, shaming me. At times, he withheld food because he, quote unquote, earned the money. So withholding food.
Oh, wow.
All of it's bad, but
it's all bad.
When that starts to happen,
Man. That's a whole nother level of terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah. One night he destroyed my small altar, my last safe corner in one room of the house I would often retreat to. By the way, I feel like we might have responded to one of her emails, or I read one of her emails, because I remember that detail about the small altar. Or it could have been someone else, but anyway. I began attending a small church, searching for support. The pastor initially offered to help me through counseling about my shame over smoking. But at our second meeting, he confessed his attraction and told me not to tell anyone, especially his wife. Any thoughts on that, Bob?
Well, it's just terrible. Like, it's exploitive. It's exploitive. It's disgusting. It's abuse of power. It's preying on the vulnerable. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
And I had a girlfriend years ago who this happened to, right before she and I started dating. This is back when I was in college, and same kind of thing. And every time I hear this story, I remember her and the shit she had to go through, and yuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah. Same thing I'll say to therapists, keep it in your fucking pants.
Yeah, it's not hard.
If you are attracted to someone, fine, but figure your shit out and don't amplify it and don't tell the person, figure your shit out.
Yeah, because it's not about them.
Yeah.
And
a pastor, I would argue, is even more sacred than a therapist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know what's wrong with people.
Going on. It was unsettling. He hugged me too long, and I left confused, telling myself I wouldn't see him again. But he kept pursuing me. He seemed wise and caring. He said all the right things, and it drew me in. Despite shame and conflict, I became entangled in a 7-month affair with him. I tried to end it many times, but he always talked me into just one more meeting. He was intelligent and charismatic. Places once sacred like church became dark to me. Some need was clearly being met that I wasn't getting at home, and I convinced myself I loved him. Any thoughts on that, Bob?
There's no way, man. It's all this secrecy and power abuse. I can imagine you just getting hornswoggled by a flood of thoughts and confusion and telling yourself stuff that turns out not to be true. Like, I love this guy. No. I know that loving feelings might be part of the picture, but that doesn't mean that that's a wholesome relationship. It's clearly not a wholesome relationship. So you're being ripped off.
Yeah. What I'll say is that when you are an abuse victim of any sort, particularly of a high level like this, and someone comes along that at the very least is less abusive,
right,
then it is obviously something you're going to gravitate towards. And the fact that it's an affair and the other person is having an affair actually makes it safer feeling, because it's seemingly less likely to get back to your husband, who will surely kill you if this were to be found out.
Right.
It's sort of like you take any organism, human or other animal, and I don't know, like you light the ground on fire, and then you give them an option to jump out of the fire. It doesn't really matter what that other option is. They're going to do it, even if it's not ideal, right? I guess while we're on this analogy, it's like when you have a burning building like the World Trade Center and people jump out of windows. It's like people will say that in those moments, if they jumped out of like a 4-story building and survived, they'll say like, well, I was pretty sure I was going to die, but it didn't matter because there were flames and it was so hot and I couldn't breathe. Yeah. And I didn't want to die, obviously, but I didn't want that feeling anymore, so I just went the other direction. That's what this is. This is a survival thing. Yeah. It's not a choice you're making, really. It's something you're doing out of absolute desperation, and all of that needs to be taken into consideration. Now, she's a grown woman. She has knowledge of how to make choices to some extent, but when you're in the hole of abuse, it's understandable at the very least.
Right. But the thing about fidelity is what am I faithful to? Like, I'm not faithful to something that's good for me, that's wholesome for me. I'm not being treated properly. So, like, unless you're in the foxhole, nobody knows what they would do, and there's nothing here hope there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing here to judge. I hope people would refrain from judging Nicole for this thing. I mean,
right. Yeah, I mean, to take it to an extreme end, did you see The Room, the movie?
Oh yeah, Room.
Or wait, I think it's just called Room, because The Room is the funny one that's not supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
And then there's Room, which
Brie
is the one with Brie Larson.
Yeah, Oscar.
If she were to leave, and let's say that she and the guy got married somehow, like there was a ceremony and she ended up getting married to this guy, or whatever, or had verbally said that she is in a committed relationship with a guy that has her locked in a shed in the backyard.
Right.
And she escapes and has sex with someone else. Is that infidelity? No, of course not.
No.
So just because on paper, and on the surface, and even maybe in your conscious mind, you're in an exclusive, dedicated marriage, obviously something turned a quarter to the point where you don't even know your own mind. Right. And that's no longer the sort of thing one can cheat on.
Yeah, that's nicely put.
Going on. He justified our actions by pointing to our... I'm worried people are going to think you're farting, Bob, but you're just shifting.
In this noisy chair.
Yeah. He justified our actions by pointing to our unhappy marriages. He justified our actions. He justified... the pastor justified our actions, our infidelity, by pointing to our unhappy marriages, and even twisted my faith to keep ensuring his desires were being met.
Gross.
My God. I was a shell of myself, often crying after seeing him, drowning in guilt, anxiety attacks, and nightmares. The guilt consumed me. Eventually, my husband found a message, confronted me, and I told him about the infidelity. In a rage, he confronted the pastor at his home in front of his wife. The fallout was devastating. The church branded me the Buddhist temptress who corrupted their pastor.
Whoa. People are so weird.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. The person with power was the one that was corrupted. Right. Yeah. So by context, I think what she's saying is that she was seen as like a Buddhist that was going to this Christian church, or I don't know. But
she got othered, right? And then, the world's been doing this to women forever.
Yeah. And Christians have been doing it to non-Christians forever. We left town quickly. My husband swung between clinging tightly and being cruel, physically and emotionally. The pastor stalked me for months until I finally cut contact and reported him to the police.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah. One night, my husband turned especially violent, throwing me around and screaming I was a whore that God would never forgive. Wow. And I believed him. He was later arrested after my sister called for a wellness check, but I still wrote a court statement to ease his charges. That became a breaking point that shifted a lot. I began waking up in new ways. So just chiming in. Yeah, this is often what people in what I would call moderate to severe abusive relationships will report once they start going through recovery, is they will be so gaslit. People use that term in ways that are ridiculous. I hope people hear in this story, she's not saying the word gaslight, but that's what's happening. She's not even really alluding to being gaslit much, but, well, I guess she was saying that she felt guilty. She felt like something was wrong with her.
Right.
This is the story that I'll hear, is that there will be some kind of breaking point. And it's often an outside element. So this sister probably had worries and concerns, maybe knew a few things, and was getting escalatedly upset or worried or concerned or hating this guy, this husband, and probably was really on the fence of, do I call the police? And because my sister isn't asking me to call the police, and what if I call the police, and what's this husband going to do? Will I completely lose contact with my sister if I call the police? What will the police? It's just you just don't know. But the police are called, and then the police are investigating, so they end up talking, and especially if they have someone that specializes in this, and they're getting better. Every police officer is different, every department is different, but at the very least, there's an investigation. There's questions like, what happened to you? And there's something about sitting in front of a police officer as they're asking you questions that wakes you up a little bit, or gives you that opportunity.
Wow.
You're not isolated. You're not like in a stagnant room that's like a shed locked in the backyard. You're suddenly on the street talking to an outsider, and they're reacting to you not like you deserved it at the very least, and maybe they're even saying, "Oof, wow." And in this moment, you're given this opportunity to contrast your gaslit state with someone else's reaction. That's what abusers do, is they isolate one and then they gaslight as well. And so there's you basically, when you're in that ongoing situation, you have one person to gauge whether or not you're sane or not. And so as you start to think, I think this is wrong, you only have one. There's only the jury of your peers consists of one person, and it's the abuser. And that person is not only saying that they don't agree with you, but they're actually saying the opposite. Not only are you an abuse victim, but you deserve this. In fact, you're the abuser. And so often it requires these kinds of So this is another. I'm sending this message out so that depending on the scenario, case by case, that from an outside point, you can't depend on the abuse victim on the inside to do something. Like if you're near them and you're trying to advise them or something, that might not ever work.
Yeah.
And so you might be altruistically strategizing about what you're going to do in spite of your friend or family member or person you care about that's in an abusive relationship. Case by case basis, because if you do something, it actually could get people killed. Even the police could even kill everyone. That happens sometimes. So it's not a universal thing, but it is a common thing that I'll hear. So we're hearing that from her. She's saying it was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
My husband and I tried to rebuild, but the cycle continued. Now, with all that I did to hurt him, he had even more reason to mistreat me. I answered every painful question about the affair in hopes of rebuilding trust, but it only deepened the trauma on both sides. I lived like a prisoner for months, literally not allowed to leave the house.
Oof.
The memories of what I did tormented me. So let me guess and read between the lines that I've seen this before, that abusers, generally speaking, are abusing because they have an understandable, logical inner child that is afraid. It doesn't justify any, millimeter of what they're doing, but it is the basis of what they're doing. They're not a narcissist. They're not a psychopath necessarily. They could be, but that's not usually the case. And I've treated convicted perpetrators, and I'm telling you, this is the case. They can be despicable fucking human beings, but it's not psychopathy underneath it necessarily. It's not usually the case. So what'll happen in a scenario like this is that there is a kernel of reasonableness inside of them, inside of the abuser. There's a human, there's empathy. And so when they discover that they've been cheated on, there's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of ups and downs, but there's also this recognition from the abuser of just like, because there's almost a self-gaslighting that they engage in as well, that they slowly enter into a world that they're building very adamantly that is constructed around a lie that through coercive control, it's all justified in that it's actually helping the attachment security. But when these kinds of things happen, when they suddenly realize that they're being cheated on, or sometimes it's the abuse victim will leave or will call a domestic violence specialist or something. There'll be some kind of wake-up call. And the abuser sometimes flies off the handle and never looks back. It doesn't mean that underneath it there isn't at least some kernel of empathy. But I've seen this a lot where they will... now, I'm not saying he doesn't have narcissism. There's a possibility he does, but it's not like the way that people talk about the internet. Anyway, so what will sometimes happen is they will have some health. It'll give hope. Even to me as an outsider, I will be treating couples or abuse victims or perpetrators. I've seen it from a lot of different sides where I, as a therapist, am like, oh, okay, now begins the healing. And I'll even have the perpetrator will say like, God, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I'm an abusive person, and help me out with this. And, so begins the journey. But in my experience, especially with someone with this profile, it could take the rest of his life to get 50% down the road. It's unlikely, even if he really dedicates himself, that he's going to shed all of his abusive tendencies. It's just not likely. Now, can we reduce a lot of it? Can we mitigate a lot of it? Yes, because it's one thing to have a system and go down a road of full control over another person. It's another thing to have impulses where people from the outside can say no. And it doesn't mean that it's not abusive. It can still hurt the abuse victim. But if the abuse victim can instantly tell me, and I can talk with the perpetrator in the room and say, you can't do that, the abuse victim is no longer a victim. They're being victimized occasionally, but they're not a victim. They're not being systematically controlled and isolated. So there's a huge difference there. The temptation or the confusion for the victim is that, oh my God, I'm finally getting what I want. He's admitting that he's abusive. Things are getting a little better. That nice part of him is coming out more. I do have support from the outside. Things are better than they've ever been in my life because I didn't have this when I was growing up, and I didn't have it through my 17 years of being married, but now I finally have it. And so by contrast, so it's a very confusing situation because it's like, do I leave? Do I stay? Because I finally have what I want. And I do love this man, and we do have kids together, and I financially do kind of need him, and I don't really know who I am without him. So, there's also the over-dependency, the dependent personality aspect of it, which is often the case with abuse victims, being abused their whole life. Because one of the things you snuff out of people through abuse growing up and in a marriage is the notion that you're competent at anything, and you might not be competent at anything because you've never been allowed to try and learn and figure things out for yourself. So you probably do make mistakes when you go grocery shopping completely on your own without being told exactly what to do. You know what I mean? But that's life. And, that's how you become competent.
Like everybody's on a learning curve.
Right. When I was 18, the first time I went to the grocery store, I was also incompetent,
right.
in that way. So anyway, it kind of sounds like maybe that it's somewhere in that camp that she was in at this point, where everything blew up, cops, sister, he is, and the affair, and then he's like, oh my God, and so she's saying that he would vacillate between this really scared child trying to be warm, and he's like terrified of losing her, but then he would be abusive. So it has that feeling to me, and from the outside, simple thinkers will think, well, you should leave him. He's a fucker. But sometimes, that's not easy. One, it's never easy, but it might not even be philosophically the best answer at getting her needs met. There is a path forward. Would it be easier? Would it be cleaner? Would it pretty much guarantee you're not going to is it going to reduce the likelihood of being victimized and abused by this man? Yeah. Do you need this man? No. Are there other ways to get support and other ways to get affection? Yes. But, bonds are bonds, and love is love, and life is life, and decisions are decisions. And I say that because I've lived with, I've worked with couples and perpetrators and victims in intimate partner violence relationships where in the beginning of my career, I would just be like screaming in the back of my head, leave him, leave him, leave him, leave him. What are you doing? Leave him, leave him. And I was smart enough not to say such things. I was smart enough to try to not come across as biased, but I failed probably a lot. But then eventually I started to actually see the reality of these situations and realized that I really don't know if that's the best answer. It certainly would solve some things that need to be solved. And
maybe your own discomfort.
Right. And it would certainly solve my discomfort of having to be powerless over what's happening to this person. But it's not that simple. I've had people in this situation over the span of 10, 15 years. And in the last 5 years, things are better. But he's still abusive, or the abuser is still being abusive. But she or the victim has therapy and the abuser is in therapy. And the victim knows that they don't deserve to be treated that way. And they have ways of managing that in their mind and verbally and with power and agency. They have ways of protecting the kids now. You know what I mean? Like it's complicated. And when they're in that middle zone, we don't know what's going to happen, and it's up to them. And the other thing is, it's like, how do you even, when you're talking to the victim as a therapist, at what point do you say to them, you can't even trust your own mind? But that's just me gaslighting the client.
Yeah.
You know? So you're in that weird space of like, wait, so am I colluding with the gaslighting by not pressing this client to leave, and by not like screaming for the mountaintop, he's abusive, you don't deserve this shit? Or am I just being another abuse? Am I just falling into that projective identification that she's pushing me into by controlling her?
Yeah.
It gets weird. So anyway, going on.
That's important for those of us who would simplify this to this, soundbite of you should just leave, and think that that's good advice and blame her if she stays.
Right.
Right. And we want to stay away from that because that's bullshit.
Right. Let's take a break.
Right on.
All right, back from the break. So, going on with the email. My husband and I tried to rebuild, but the cycle continued. Now, with all that I did to hurt him, he had more reason to mistreat me. I think I already read this, but I'll just give. I answered every painful question about the affair in hopes of rebuilding trust, but it only deepened the trauma on both sides, meaning that it would hurt him to relive these infidelities, and it would hurt her because she didn't feel good about these infidelities. I lived like a prisoner for months, literally not allowed to leave the house. The memories of what I did tormented me. Visions of the pastor's eyes looked like when he was wanting me sexually still haunt me, along with many other things he did that I brushed off at the time. It just flooded me. It was really, it was all really bad. Yeah, just chiming in. Even just framing it as infidelity is a bit of a stretch to some extent, given the way that you're talking about it. And I don't know, I'm hearing it through your eyes, but it would be pretty easy to frame what the pastor did to you as sexually abusive.
I don't have any hard time with that. That's definitely exploitive.
In your state, meaning victim state, and also a person of power, and him using religion to coerce you. This is akin to someone roofing your drink and you're semi-passed out and they're raping you in the bathroom.
Right.
No one says that you did that volitionally.
Oh, you were unfaithful.
Yeah.
No, you were abused. You were assaulted.
Right. Even if he, for some reason, was struggling in his marriage or having a normal attraction towards a client or towards a parishioner, everyone understands, especially someone in that position, of where she was, that she was an abuse victim that was in a very vulnerable state. And so I say that because there's a good chance that he is an absolute psychopathic predator. So the husband might be psychopathic, but might not be. A lot of abusers are not psychopathic. They might have psychopathic urges or justifications, but baseline, they have empathy like other people do. The pastor, there's evidence based on what you're describing that he literally has no empathy and prefers to sadistically prey on people. So framing it as infidelity is very questionable. And the fact that you're having like visions of his eyes looking at you with attraction is telling, going on. I eventually left for a time, stayed with my sister, and then followed what I thought was a deep inner call to India, where I lived in an ashram for 9 months. Near the end of my stay, I had a powerful dream and epiphany that I should reunite with my family and that I would conceive, and this time the baby would survive. I had suffered 11 miscarriages previously.
Whoa.
Yeah. First off, I'm just so glad that she was able to get away from everything. To my surprise, that's what happened. I came home reconnected, and after a few months became pregnant, and we entered a redemption season. My baby girl is now 1, and she has brought so much joy. Therapy helped us in ways for a while, but our therapist had to go on medical leave, so perhaps we will start again when he is better. The therapist is better. Still, our home has become calmer. We are parenting better. We have built a beautiful community around me. I have built a beautiful community around me in the last year, hosting a women's group and a mom and tots group each week. I have friends again. Okay, just chiming in here. So these are definitely good signs.
Yep.
Right?
Not isolated.
Right. And that he might be, and he's in therapy, or he was in therapy with the couple therapist.
Right.
And that he might be addressing some of these issues, right? I've also been less obsessive about living a spiritual hippy-dippy life. And I learned that maybe a lot of it was in my mind and also not so healthy. I feel more grounded. Your podcast has helped me with this too, just chiming in. So what do you think she means by that?
Which part?
I've been less obsessive about living a spiritual hippy-dippy life. And I learned that maybe a lot of it was in my mind and not so healthy.
It sounds like another sort of distortion about, like it wasn't an abusive relationship, it was infidelity. I don't know. That's how it sounds to me. Like maybe there's a vulnerability to a continued distortion of self-judgment.
Right. Hard to know.
Yeah, hard to know.
But the spiritual hippy-dippy life...
It's such a shitty way to put it.
Well, there's, if this was an independent evaluation for herself, just like, yeah, I was really into this thing and I was, but now I feel like, I don't know, it doesn't really appeal to me anymore or whatever, that's fine. But we know that the whole church called her the Buddhist the temptress.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, but at the very least there's that, but there also could be her husband could be threatened by her spirituality or something because it's her being herself.
Right.
Anyway, I am even starting school again to upgrade my high school courses at the age of 33.
Good on you.
I'd like to have the option to attend university when my baby is older and we are ready to have a little time apart. So lots of victories are taking place. I love life and I am enjoying it a lot more than ever before. So just chiming in here. This sounds a lot like the victims that I would work with both in couple and in individual therapy, that a lot of good things have happened. They recognize that isolation is the enemy. They're actively not being isolated. They're still with their partner that has those tendencies, and there might even be things happening along those lines. But generally speaking, things are a lot better, and they are optimistic about the future, something like that. From the outside, it's like, well, if he's still being abusive at times, then what are you doing? Right. But it's more complicated than that. Going on, my husband still drinks, and he can be quite reactive, but the emotional abuse is less frequent and physical aggression almost non-existent. I have found ways that help me cope through the harder days, but I remain uncertain. So any thoughts on that, Bob?
Uncertain about what?
I think uncertain about, well, she's about to ask some questions.
Okay.
But she is saying that the emotional abuse is less frequent.
Yeah.
Which, when we think about the story up until this point, it's like, oh, thank God. But any emotional abuse is abuse.
Yeah.
And most relationships don't have any emotional abuse.
Right.
And people that are in these kind of relationships might not really fully understand that, that any amount of emotional abuse is a fucking problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you leave the person, but it needs to be, at the very least, framed that way. Now, having said that, again, I've worked with victims who get to this place, and from my outside position, for the first 10 years of my career, I would be a little skeptical or dubious about their claim that, like, things are better. Well, they're better by contrast,
right?
But they're not better. They're not good. It's also, from the outside, it just seems like, well, you don't even realize what you are deserving, and you think like baseline you deserve to be abused anyway. So this is all gravy. But I'm telling you, if you found another man, in all likelihood, he wouldn't be abusive at all. Just imagine having someone that loved you and didn't abuse you at all, ever. Like they didn't even have the impulse to do it. You didn't. So all that's true, but that denies the bond that they do have. It denies that they have kids together. It denies her agency to make her own choices around it. And what is tolerable to one person is different from another. Also, there's a chance that she's in that place that I've seen a lot of clients will be in, where they will I will learn from the outside is that as they are being emotionally abused occasionally, they frame it as not on them. It's like, oh, my husband is having a moment and it's fucking annoying.
As opposed to, oh, I caused it because I got the wrong peanut butter.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a wholly different thing.
Big shift.
Now, you still don't deserve to be emotionally abused,
Right.
and any little bit will get under your skin to some extent. But with the measures in place, the support, the therapy, with it being a lot less, with a certain mindset, maybe even with him apologizing, I don't know, then a lot of things can be different. And I've worked with couples like this where they'll be in this state and the abuser will do this, but maybe a couple days later will half apologize, and then a couple weeks later will fully apologize. But it just keeps happening. And from the outside, you look at it, you're like, well, but he keeps doing it. But from the inside, it's like, yeah, but I love him.
Right.
And he makes mistakes, and I understand why he does it. But then you ask, well, you've never not been in an abusive relationship, so you think that you're in the golden land, but you're still in the shit land. You're just in the less shit land. You know what I mean? But we can't know that from the outside. Going on. Well, let's take a break. We get back. Let's answer her questions. What do you say?
Right on.
Okay, back from the break. So, Bob, first question. There's, I don't know, a handful of questions. Is this a safe relationship, or is it just less bad?
It's less bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I should say more about that. Well, I guess I want to say it as simply as that, because that's the question that's asked, and I want to be clear, and I don't want to equivocate. There's validity in harm reduction without condoning that there's still harm. There's still harm. So it's less bad.
Yeah.
It's not safe. Safe is safe. Harm is harm. Does it mean you should leave, though? That's up to you.
Yeah. What would you do?
What would I do if I were her? How the fuck would I know? Well, knowing what I know about my own attachment style, I'd probably stay. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Is it a bad thing? I still don't know. It's a thing, and we each get to drive we get to walk our path. We each get to walk our path, and it isn't for anybody else to say what it should or shouldn't be. The problem with fucking the world is everybody's got a goddamn opinion about what everybody else should be doing, blah, blah, blah. But it's all just nonsense and gossip and a failure in empathy. So let's just, everybody back the fuck off. It's none of our business.
Yeah. I think she's in a space of really wondering,
Good.
That question, like, am I just settling for something that's less bad?
Yes.
Or am I actually in an advisable relationship? You know what I mean? Am I
It's an interesting question.
deluding myself? No, and she doesn't think we'd be able to answer the question, but I think the larger question is, how do you figure that out?
Yeah.
So what would you say?
Well, I'd like what you said about 4 minutes ago about how she may not have inside her an inner working model of a relationship that's safe. So to her, this is better. It is better. I mean, it is definitely, it's less harm. And to her, that might be because of the way her mind proportions things, that might be optimal, or it might appear optimal because I haven't had anything. It's sort of like if I jump out the window, yeah, it's better because I'm not getting burned, but I'm still falling, right? So is it better? Well, I'm not getting burned, but I'm also still falling, and so there's still the danger here. But I've noticed this about people is when they think about their relationships lately, I've been having a lot of talks with my couples about it lately, is like, what's its purpose? And what I'm discovering is most of us have never talked about it, don't have a sense of what it is. And for those of us who have a trauma and abuse history, our belief about what is possible between two people is distorted by the lens of our own experience. So I can't say I actually know. And I say that with a bit of humility, I hope, because I don't have inside me a particularly good working model of what it is to be in I suppose an optimal relationship is the best I can do right now. Well, I guess my point about Nicole is it's as you say, Nicole might not have an inner working model of what would be optimal between two people who love each other. And so therefore is operating with the model and experience that she has, and is doing her own comparing. It's better than that. But it seems like she's doing it with the awareness that maybe something else is out there because she's asking the question.
Yeah. Yeah. What I have done with my clients is the following, which is that to answer this question is hard for anyone. It's not easy for others to do, even though they might think that it is easy for them to answer a question like this. It's really not. You're bonded, you're attached, and that isn't easily thrown away. And I'm guessing that there are wonderful, you've said this, that when he loves you, it's beautiful, and it's probably a beautiful love. And people on the outside that are ignorant would say, well, that's all him manipulating you. And that's not necessarily true. It's not likely true. It could be true, but it's not likely true. So what I do is I try to build up a connection with the self with my client. So for you, you are and have been on a journey of discovering that connection with yourself, with your needs, your wants, your desires, your emotions, yourself. You were denied that growing up. You were definitely pushed away from whatever semblance you had of that in your abusive relationship, as he isolated you even from yourself, even from your own mind. And you've been building that up. And that is the guide. That's the central glowing orb of motivation that guides all of us to stay or go. When I wake up in the morning and I guess passively decide to stay married to my wife, that's where that radiates from, is that me. And I'm in connection with that me sufficiently so that I can know that I'm confident in what I'm doing, that it's for me. I am selfishly in this marriage. So getting in connection with that, what are you? Who are you? How do you feel? What do you need? So I've talked about connection with self and asking yourself these questions, and being in relationships or therapy that also asks you these questions repeatedly. What do I feel? What do I want? What are my needs? What do I feel? What do I want? What are my needs? What's going on with you right now? Emotionally, physically, spiritually? Who am I? What do I feel? What do I want? What do I feel? What do I want? What do I need? What do I need? Now, we don't always get what we need or want, but you have to know that glowing orb of inner you-ness in order to begin to have these conversations. You can't just be reactive to the outside, because you'll get fucked. So I'm guessing that you're in a lot more connection with yourself. It sounds like you are, but there's probably a lot more to go. I even will do this with people that weren't abused growing up and are asking themselves questions like this, because in our society, TikTok-y society, we tend to think that there's like a key, there's an answer, there's a hack or some kind of wisdom. And certainly, absorb, because that's basically what I'm doing right now, is giving you some sort of TikTok-y wisdom. But the reality is that only you can define this. And, especially if you're in an abusive relationship, everyone thinks they have a better opinion than you. So it gets particularly weird. But finding that inner orb of who you are, and it's not just around this issue of should I stay or should I go, it's what is the meaning of my life? Why am I even fucking here? Being married is a part of that, but there's a lot of things that are a part of that. So a lot of things benefit by being in connection with that. I'm assuming that this is the case for you. I don't know if that's the case for you. It'd be weird if it wasn't the case for you, but that would be one of the things. The other thing is there are certain questions I would ask. That feeling you got in the grocery store, do you still have it at all about anything? Because if you do, fuck that shit and fuck him. Because that's bullshit. He can have his preferences and you can consider his feelings, but if you're scared, fuck that shit and get angry about it. And that's the key. When you're a victim, anger is your friend. Anger tells you when injustice is happening, and it'll motivate you to fight. Now, you don't physically fight or verbally abuse, but you stand up for at the very least in your mind. It doesn't necessarily even mean that you have to confront him about it, but you're at the grocery store and you're about to grab the no stir peanut butter, and you get this thought in, oh, but husband's going to be upset. Well, what's the difference between accommodating someone else's preference or considering it and being terrified or being afraid, being unsafe? Those are two very different things. I'm worried about his reaction. Well, what does that mean? Am I worried about him scaring me? Am I worried about him hurting me? Am I worried about him being in a bad mood for 5 days and I have to tiptoe around him? Or am I worried I'm just going to bother my husband who I don't like to bother? And I know he has a particular pet peeve around peanut butter, and I can't relate. How do you differentiate between those two things? Those are very important to be able to do. Also, some people are just afraid of people that aren't intimidating because you grew up like that. Now, I would guess that every time you feel fear in relation to your husband, it's justified. But you can't know that necessarily. It's hard. But I would definitely zero in on, do I feel fear? Because you should never feel afraid of taking an action that isn't harmful to anyone else. I mean, it's like you should. I think people, you know, and I think Nicole, because you're laying it out in your email that was strange to feel afraid. So I'm guessing you would know the difference between what things you should be afraid of and things that you shouldn't be afraid of. I'm guessing 99% of the things you feel afraid of in relation to your husband is unjustified, today included. So do you have anything like that? I'm not hearing anything because you're not talking about that. But if you do, then at the very least on a in the moment or in that week, because that doesn't have to do necessarily with leaving or staying, but it does have to do with how to fully extract yourself from the cult of your husband's attachment insecurity and disentangling yourself from that. So that's what I would say to that. It's more complicated than that, but anyway. Next question, which is, okay. She asks, if I remember correctly, Kirk, you have said that infidelity is never okay, except maybe when someone is in an abusive, isolated relationship. Can you elaborate? Yes, I can elaborate, Nicole. So I would never say, at least I hope, that, or convey the notion that infidelity is never okay except in an abusive relationship. Let me be clear. Infidelity is in a non-abusive relationship, is a knowingly harmful act and therefore immoral. When you know that you are risking harm and you're being harmful to someone, that is immoral. Now, when you're in an abusive relationship, that is completely off the table because, like I said, if you're in a fiery building and the alternative is to jump out of the third-story building, risking, killing yourself or hurting someone on the ground, you don't have a choice. No one has a choice in that matter. No one has a choice in the matter when you're completely isolated and abused and gaslit and isolated to the point where you can't have friends, you can't leave the house, you can't go to the grocery store, you can't. You don't even have agency over your own body. You're handing your body over because you're worried he's going to rage and hurt you. You're in a constant state of mental and physical rape. And then a pastor comes along and listens to you and says that he likes you and is at the very least not physically harming you and maybe not verbally abusing you. He's power abusing you. He's exploitation abusing you. But on the surface, he's not yelling at you. He's not throwing you across the room. No one is going to turn that down, or at least most people are going to very much consider that, not because they're choosing to have an affair, but because they have almost no other choice than to jump out that window. So morality is not a matter of this scenario. Now, from the outside, and certainly the church that thinks of you as a Buddhist temptress, that's what they'll fucking say, but they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
They do not.
Big surprise there. But if you're not in an abusive relationship and you are engaging in infidelity at really any level, you are knowingly doing something that is harmful, and that is the definition of immorality. If I walk up to someone on the street and push them down, I know that's going to harm them, and therefore it's immoral. Now, immorality happens all the time, especially in a marriage. We knowingly hurt our partner's feelings all the time. Every time we raise our voice, every time we call them a name, which is not okay. Every time we refuse to listen to them. Every time we, take things out on them or something. Now, there's a fuzzy line there because sometimes we're distorted or confused or reactive or something, and we're not aware of the quote unquote harm that we're doing. So, there's that. But especially when it comes to infidelity, again, in a non-abusive relationship, that requires thousands of decisions typically that are all knowingly risking or just flat out knowingly harming the partner. Now, from the outside, we can look at something and say, well, it kind of makes some sense. Yeah, but it doesn't deny the immorality of it. I'm not saying that infidelity is never okay except in an abusive relationship. The word okay, if you want to take that to be a stand-in for immorality, but we are frequently immoral actors as humans. Every time that I speed on the road, I am knowingly risking harm of running someone over or killing myself or hurting someone. It's a risk, right? And there are times when I absolutely know that it's not justified. So, we could say all sorts of the reason why I'm saying this is I want people to get off of considering immorality as some sort of like horrible, dark devil thing. It's a thing that we do. We are human beings. It's something to look at, not to be ashamed of, but to say, I shouldn't do that anymore. And when people do it to us, we have to recognize that we do it to other people at times. Mm-hmm. But we have to be able to label it, because we have a word, moral and immoral, for a reason, and the fucking conservatives and the religious people steal it and say gay people are immoral. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Do not.
If anything, they're the immoral ones for saying that gay people are immoral.
Yeah.
So fuck them. I'm taking the word back. It's a helpful word.
It is a very helpful
and
word.
It's easily defined as knowingly harmful. And having someone that's gay is not knowingly harmful, okay?
No.
And I believe that was the original reason why sin, the concept of sin existed. I know I've talked about with historians and philosophers. I'm very interested in the topic. And it's hard to know what the ancients thought of sin because it was defined. But it makes sense to me that when you had leadership and a group of people, you would develop a system that would either consciously or unconsciously try to help everyone live a happy life and dictate fairness among everybody. So you are trying to help people with decision-making around what's moral and what's immoral. Thou shalt not kill. So we need to have a conversation about this, because when we divorce ourselves so much from the term of morality and immorality, then we're still living with the concept of immorality, because whether we have words for it or not, we all understand. I mean, other social animals, other primates,
children understand.
But monkeys they've found as well, because they'll give like kale to one monkey and grapes to another monkey, and then the kale monkey will be, if they didn't know that the other monkey got grapes, they'll eat the kale, but they see someone get grapes, they're like, fuck you. That's immoral. I'm getting fucked. This is injustice. This isn't fair. I'm being harmed. Give me the fucking grapes, So we understand this, and we have to be able to talk about it. That's why I talk about it. I could avoid the whole thing and avoid confusion. And the only reason why I even bring this up over time in videos and in audio podcasts is because therapists will justify to clients that they're having affairs. They'll hear from a client that the client says, I have to confess, I'm cheating on my husband. There are so many fucking therapists, and anecdotally, I would say most will figure out a way to justify it for the client. Well, he's a jerkface. Even in non-abusive situations. Well, he works a lot. And we've been fighting all the time, and I just need someone to feel close to. Okay, totally. I get that. That sounds bad. That doesn't justify knowingly harming another person. You either need to divorce or don't. Or help, fix your marriage, or divorce, or tell your husband you need to be with other people, let's figure that out or whatever.
Or at least just acknowledge you're behaving in a way that is knowingly harmful to another. It's not for a therapist to decide what you should or shouldn't do,
Right.
but holding up a mirror and saying, you're behaving in a way that's harming another human.
And you know it.
And you know it.
Yeah.
So how do you want to sleep at night? What's your thing here?
Or would you like to talk about that?
Yeah.
And if someone says no, then I'm okay. Well,
then so be it. One thing we might be getting away from here a little bit in terms of Nicole is Nicole was never unfaithful.
right. Was never in a situation where choice was possible.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
So when Nicole says, what was the question exactly? Can you read it again?
You've said infidelity is never okay except
Yeah.
maybe an abusive relationship. Can you elaborate? That's what she said.
Right. So, but the presumption is that Nicole was being was engaged in infidelity, not the way we're talking about what is real infidelity. We're not talking about even a level playing field here. So the fact that Nicole's asking this question says to me that Nicole's still looking at her behavior in terms of this word fidelity.
Right.
And that's a mistake.
Right. And she's asking, I don't know if I read this in a longer email or I did read this part, but she still shames herself for cheating.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's not, I don't know. She can frame it however she wants to.
Oh,
but,
yeah, that's true.
But that's not how I would see it.
It
You were in a top tier abusive relationship. The length of time, the marker, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, obviously, but the tip of the iceberg that you're mentioning, in those details, I absolutely know that you were in a legitimate, horrific, intimate partner violence relationship, not in the TikTok version of abusive relationship where it's just like, he didn't buy me a large fry at McDonald's, I'm abused, or whatever the fuck people say. Can you tell I'm not like a huge fan of TikTok? But I mean, there's all sorts of people on TikTok, but anyway, there's just a greater incidence of that in my anecdotal experience on TikTok. But I'm talking about like legit textbook, horrific psychological torture, the same sort of torture that you would get in a Nazi concentration camp, literally. The same that you would get if you were indoctrinated into a cult at the age that you were, from birth. And you're told, all these sorts of, you were indoctrinated into a system of horrific torture for years. And to say that you cheated on him is understandable given the way society sees it. And it's your fucking husband talking. I can't believe you cheated on me because, this is like all that he talks about. And, talk about it however you want to with him. But personally, if I were in your position, knowing what I know, I'd be like, look, you forced me to be open. I should blame you for the fact that I was abused by a pastor because, blah, blah. Anyway. Going on. What does repair look like when infidelity becomes a justification for ongoing mistreatment? Meaning that the husband is, quote unquote, justifiably mistreating her. So how do you repair the infidelity? Because, I'll talk about infidelity repair, like recovery. So what does that look like, Bob?
Well, it's apples and oranges. We're not talking about repair. I kind of feel angry right now. Like she didn't say this, but does the husband expect that she's going to say she's sorry? Is that what you hear? Like it's just got so much hubris in it. It's hard for me to, if that's I'm probably reading into it. Okay, but fine. Let's say I'm not reading into it. Let's just say that I'm hearing it the way it is. Like, dude, the husband is actually like wanting an apology for getting, quote, cheated on after being a dick like this? Are we kidding? Like, really? Fuck no.
Yeah.
Now, if they want to stay in the relationship, that's their business. But if I were their therapist, I'd be like, if you guys are going to stay together, you wipe the slate clean and you're starting over right now from scratch, right? And everything that's taken place in the past is the past, and the contract that you make now is the contract that you make now that you abide by. And if anything, husband, be ready for your own apology because you were behaving reprehensibly and you've caused harm.
Right. That's the part of it that I personally would focus on, given my style, is I would say, okay, fine. Was she a grown woman when she made these decisions? Yeah. Okay, fine. It is dwarfed by the millions of other harmful acts that he did.
Over years.
Yeah. So, okay, husband, if you want an apology, great. I'm all about apology. For every apology that she gives to you for cheating, you're going to apologize literally a million times over for what you did to her. So let's do it. Let's go. And maybe that would translate into 10-1 or something.
Sure.
But that would be the conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if we're talking about apologies, there's a lot of let's just say there's a lot of apologies that have to go both directions. 99% of them are going to be you, pal.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's not passing judgment. That's just being real about harm.
Yeah, but it's also a little judgmental, but it's also, if he is legitimately wanting to make the relationship better, him apologizing will help him to realize what he did wrong and will steer him away from the attachment behaviors that are not okay and towards the behaviors that are.
Yeah.
And if he's legitimately interested, which I think he might be, and I've worked with perpetrators that definitely are.
Yeah.
They actually want to apologize. They just need someone to kind of push them that direction. And there can be a huge amount of healing, mainly from the perpetrator, honestly, when they apologize, because their fear often is that if they acknowledge that there's something wrong with them or that they did something wrong, that everyone will shame them and run away.
Right.
When that doesn't happen, there's a huge weight that's off their shoulders. So that's how I would frame it. It's like, okay, yeah, apologies, yes, and let's add all the thing. So the way that I do it as a therapist, I'd be like, okay, so you want an apology for that. Okay, let's all talk about what everyone wants apologies for. And then I would ask the wife, what do you want apologies for? And I would be waiting patiently for her to really elaborate on how many things that she would like apologies for, and how many things are interfering with her vibe with her husband, because that's essentially what he's saying. It's like, the fact that you cheated is interfering with my vibe, my trust, or whatever. It's like, okay, well, great. Let's repair that. Wife, what would you like apologies for? Now, I probably wouldn't get much out of her in the beginning because of her victim status and her life, but
or difficulty with knowing, how do I feel and what do I want?
But I would poker face it and not reveal that, because that would feel hurtful to her if I was like, come on. But I would put it on the agenda and keep asking both of the sides. Anyway, going on. Last question. How can I continue healing from my shame while also holding space for the pain I caused to my husband? How can I continue healing from my shame of cheating while also holding space for the pain I caused my husband? What do you say to that, Bob?
I think it's necessary to shift your view of your behavior from a person who voluntarily entered into an affair to a person who has been a victim of domestic violence, who's been gaslit, and then was preyed upon by an exploitive, pastor or whatever. And if you're not framing it that way, then I don't think you're going to get too far with the thing that you're asking about, because it's apples and oranges. You didn't cheat the way you're saying you cheated. It's just inaccurate. It's distorted. And unless you can look at it accurately, I don't think you're going to get too far with the thing that you're calling shame.
Yeah.
So, good luck. I think you could do it. Like, not see yourself as, a bad apple here, or a bad actor or whatever, and start seeing it. I think that's possible to do. And one wonders how you'll view, if through an accurate lens, how you might actually feel about what happened.
Yeah.
I hope different. I think different.
Yeah. Yeah. People often listen to you, Bob, so I would take solace in how powerful your words are.
Well, I don't want to come across as judgmental and blaming in the way I was describing the way people can be. We oversimplify, and the thing that you were describing as TikTok-y. I believe in accuracy, though. So I suppose it's an invitation to be accurate. But me, I'm almost a little bit nervous about how activated I can get, and I have a thing about asserting power, which I think is actually a problem, and I'm working on it in my work life. Like, you do get to actually show up here at work, and you can't just sit there and listen. It's not really your job. Your job is to actually be more than that. And so I suppose we're right on my growth edge.
The conclusion is, from Nicole, your podcast has helped me in countless ways and brought so much light to my life. I wanted to write for a while now. Sharing this feels like another step forward. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. End of email.
Good luck.
Yeah. The summary of what I'll say, Nicole, is that there's so much promise and optimism that I have for you because of your journey out of the abusive relationship. There's so many things that I'm reading between the lines. The fact that you went to India for 9 months or something, the amount of soul searching and self-recognizing that you would have to do something like that. That wasn't just going to Starbucks by yourself for an afternoon. That was a huge decision. And there were so many reasons not to, right? All the societal things, family, just the cost or the uncertainty. And you did that. So that's just one of the many things that I'm hearing, that, the fact that you are actively building a community of other moms and, of tots, and that community and that connection and that non-isolation and that break from being in a room, a shed in the backyard, and going to therapy, and that he is changing. He's better now. And I believe you. He's a lot better now. And he has more to go. And there's a chance that even when he is being abusive, that you don't really receive it in the same way that you did before. But as Bob is saying, you have this internalized shame voice that is from him and from your parents and from society, the misogyny of it, and from religion probably. And that has to be angrily snuffed the fuck out. And please take care of yourself, because
you deserve it.